Part 69. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 681. Her Majesty, is she concerned about the health of the regent, and is she also concerned about them? Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao declined Nan 11's kindness and quickly left the Dajhan palace. Just before leaving, they heard Rong Yu say indifferently, "Starting tomorrow, you are not allowed to take leave anymore. You two have already used up your vacation this year." The two of them were silent after hearing this, and responded with lowered eyebrows and eyes. As for whether the master is unwell or not, it seems that it is not so important. Her Majesty does not seem to be very worried. This means that even if there is some discomfort, Chu Nanyi has a way to adjust it. Thinking about Chu Nanyi's recent departure from the imperial capital, it seems to be related to this. In addition, their master seems to be in good spirits. He is the one who approves all the memorials, which further proves that there is no big problem with his physical condition. Judging from his clothes and the charcoal fire in the palace early, he should have caught a cold, or even if it is not a cold, it is a symptom that he must keep warm. Of course, this must be a mandatory requirement of Her Majesty the Queen, and their strong and cold master can only accept it. Xiejin quickly made a pretty accurate judgment and told Xian Yuanyao his conclusion. Unexpectedly, Xian Yuanyao was smarter than him this time and came to the conclusion without any judgment, "I know what symptoms the master has." Huh? Xiejin looked at him in surprise. "You know? How did you figure it out?" It is common for military commanders who lead troops in battles all year round to get injured. When the situation at the border is tense, they often have to stay there for several years. Whether it is the hot summer in July or the cold winter in December, they will train as usual. If they encounter a more severe war, lying on the ice in the winter is common. Xian Yuanyao frowned. This has been going on for years. Over the months, the body is inevitably damaged, and there will be some root causes of disease. You, the pampered young men who grew up in a pile of brocade, can't imagine such hardship. Xiejin's mouth twitched. "Yao Yao, can you stop venting your dissatisfaction on young Master Jingxiu every time you mention the soldiers at the border? Military generals have their duties, and young Master Jingxiu has his career. Everyone's choices are different, and they are destined to experience different things. Although military generals are indeed more hard-working than young Master Jingxiu, it does not mean that young Master Jingxiu cannot be loyal to the emperor and patriotic. Every time he is said, it seems that all young Master Jingxiu are straw bags. Why am I dissatisfied?" Xian Yuanyao glanced at him. "I just use this comparison to tell you how hard the soldiers at the border are. When supervising the rotation in the winter, the soldiers still have their own rest time, but the master has many things to do personally, and the rest time is already short. In addition, you know the master's temper. He doesn't know what fatigue and pain are. He doesn't listen to the military doctor at all, and no one dares to persuade him. After so many years, it's strange that his body can get better at this point." Xian Yuanyao sighed deeply. "When my father was young, there were wars at the Huainan border, and he suffered major and minor injuries, but my mother the concubine was more careful and thoughtful. She never let him neglect his injuries. She would call a doctor when necessary, take medicine when necessary, and force him to rest when necessary. Therefore, even at such an old age, my father has never had any major health problems." "You are right." Xiejin nodded slowly. "If Her Majesty was with the master's body would not have any root cause of illness. When the king of Huainan was guarding the border, he was taken care of by the princess, who was considerate and caring. Many times, a man himself does not care about a little injury or pain, but a woman will treat it as a big deal, so the king of Huainan can only have a good body when he is older. Rong Yu's situation is different from his. After all, Rong Yu himself was not very old at that time, and Nan 11 was even younger. How could he be taken to the battlefield? So this is also something that can't be helped. and it has been so long. Nan Yi should be well, don't worry. Xiejin patted his shoulder, I think your majesty looks fine, there shouldn't be any problem. Xian Yuanyao was silent for a moment, thinking back to how cold and ruthless the master was back then. Now he is being controlled by the queen and doesn't look like a war god anymore. Xiejin's mouth twitched, what do you mean? Do you still want the master to return to the way he was before? Xian Yuanyao sighed deeply, his face full of melancholy. Okay, don't look like you have no desire to live, you should be thankful that the queen is here, otherwise you will have to experience the taste of being in dire straits. Xiejin walked calmly towards the palace gate, his tone revealing a carefree and leisurely tone, you are so silly and cute. Even the palace maids hope that the master they serve is a good-tempered one, but this guy still misses the cold and cruel god of the past. What's he thinking? Xiejin shook his head and walked out of the palace gate, stay at Xie's house for one more night tonight, and go back to the military camp tomorrow. Yes, Xian Yuanyao nodded, we will live in the military camp starting tomorrow. The master said that our vacation this year has been used up. This means that from tomorrow, we can no longer meet each other so freely and shamelessly. Xiejin, behave well in the future. Next is the time for you to show your edge and strive to be promoted 3 levels in 3 years. Xiejin smiled lightly, Yao Yao is joking. Being promoted 3 levels in 3 years is an unattainable luxury for most people. Xian Yuanyao frowned, what else do you want? Is this a joke? Is he planning to replace his father's position as the prime minister next year? What I mean is that there is no 3rd level to be promoted to. Xiejin hooked his shoulder, and the two brothers seemed to be walking towards the direction of the carriage. Shangshu is already the highest level among the 3 provinces and 6 ministries, and the next higher level is the cabinet, but he was just promoted to minister this year. Although he seems to be not far from the cabinet, in fact, he is separated by a huge distance. Moreover, before entering the cabinet, it is definitely not enough to just have experience in the Ministry of Justice. He must also have political achievements in other aspects. In the next 3 years, at best, I will be transferred from department to department, and the possibility of promotion is slim. Really? Xian Yuanyao squinted at him, Xiejin. In terms of status, my heir apparent should be more noble than you. Xiejin was silent for a moment, then casually raised his lips, what do Yao Yao want to say? I am in charge of the military, and you are in charge of the punishment department. In terms of strength, I am stronger than you, Xian Yuanyao said in a calm tone, so in the future, I hope you can be as humble as possible in front of me, and don't be arrogant and ignorant. What's your last name? What's my last name? Xian Yuanyao frowned, Xian Yuan, remember. Xiejin suppressed a smile and nodded obediently, yes, I remember. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 682. Autumn and winter have always been a good time for ladies to appreciate chrysanthemums. Since the eldest princess returned to Dongling, she has participated in countless flower festivals such as Lotus Appreciation, Chrysanthemum Appreciation, and Plum Appreciation. However, most of the banquets she attended were the ladies of the well-known aristocratic families in the imperial capital. Lower-level aristocratic families would not dare to send her invitations even if they had any events, because they were worried that their status would not be high enough to make them laugh. But the Ruan family dared. The Ruan family dared to invite, and the eldest princess had nothing to do, so he really condescended to support her. However, the Ruan family invited quite a few people this time, and Mrs. Chu was also invited. There are Princess Jing, Princess Hui, and the wives of some important officials in the court. In terms of rank, most of them are third grade or above. Princess Jing heard that the eldest princess had also gone, and thought that it would be idle to stay at home, so she asked the maid to prepare to go with her. Princess Huai had the same reason. So today the Ruan family garden is very lively. Different from the scene where the ladies gather together, what I hear today are almost all compliments. Sometimes they praise the eldest princess for taking good care of herself and her beauty is as good as before, and sometimes they praise Princess Jing for her dignified demeanor. Noble, without losing the royal bearing, everyone had respectful and flattering smiles on their faces. The eldest princess and Princess Jing laughed it off and didn't take it seriously. This has always been the case in the circle of powerful people at the feet of the emperor. Whose family is powerful and whose family is famous can be clearly distinguished from the attitudes of these ladies. After admiring the chrysanthemums for a while, the eldest princess and several royal princesses were having tea and chatting in the warm pavilion. After a while, Mrs. Chu walked in with her maid. Her eyebrows were thoughtful. Princess Jing was related to her. Seeing her strange expression, she was the first to speak. "What's wrong?" Madame Chu sat down next to them and looked at the eldest princess. "Does your highness know that there is a medical woman named Qingling beside her majesty the queen?" Qingling, the eldest princess raised her eyebrows. "This medical girl used to be in my palace. When his majesty was pregnant with the prince, I asked her to enter the palace to serve him. After the prince was born, she stayed in the Dajhan palace to serve him for a long time. And then returned to the eldest princess's residence. Isn't it that your majesty is pregnant again? I simply asked her to stay with your majesty from now on, and I would feel more at ease with her taking care of her." Princess White was puzzled. "Why do you bring up a medical woman so politely? You don't know, this Qingling is the concubine of the Ruan family. Mrs. Ruan came to me just now to tell me about Qingling." Mrs. Chu frowned slightly. She said that Qingling ignored the etiquette and nurturing rules and had an affair with Nan Yi, the concubine of the Chu family. "For life, ask me what I think about this matter." Princess Jing was surprised. The concubine of the Chu family and the concubine of the Ruan family. The eldest princess was silent for a moment and smiled faintly. "What did the madam say?" "Although Nan Yi is a concubine, I have never cared much about his affairs," Mrs. Chu said, smiling lightly. "I'm not boasting, but the Chu family's family tradition is quite open-minded. Brothers, friends, and brothers are respectful, and Xianyi is tolerant. As for this younger brother, Nanyi is also very respectful to me, my aunt and brother. Although I have not treated him as a biological son over the years, he has everything he deserves, and he is not too partial. It is obviously hypocritical to say that the palms and backs of the hands are full of flesh. After all, the status of the legitimate son and the concubine are different, and they were not born from the same mother. How can they be treated the same?" However, Mrs. Chu believed that she was not too harsh on Chu Nanyi. At least compared to ordinary sons and daughters in the family, Chu Nanyi was treated almost like a legitimate second son at home, except that she was not particularly close to her aunt. The Chu family's family tradition is indeed good. "No one can say anything wrong about this," Princess Jing said with a smile. "Master Chu and Mrs. Chu manage the family well, and even their daughter has been raised so well. This is obvious to all. My family Chia is lucky enough to marry Hong Ai." Princess Jing had a proud tone, completely forgetting how she disliked this daughter-in-law at the beginning, but there was no need to mention the unhappiness back then. Living well now was the happiest thing. When Mrs. Chu heard this, she followed her words and smiled. "Being able to marry Prince Ji is also Hong Yi's blessing. Okay, you two don't have to praise each other. Both Chia and Hong Yi are excellent children," the eldest princess joked. "They are a match made in heaven. Chia can't live without Hong Yi, and Hong Yi will definitely marry someone else. I can't live comfortably in Prince Jing's mansion now." They complement each other. Princess Jing and Madame Chu were silent for a moment, and both smiled knowingly. Mrs. Chu quickly suppressed her smile and said calmly, I probably understood what Mrs. Ruan said. What she meant was that the marriage of concubines and concubines should be decided by the mistress, and they should not be allowed to do whatever they want. Wouldn't everything be in chaos if it were like this? Where is the majesty of the mistress? Princess Huai said, that's true. Mrs. Chu frowned slightly, although Nanyi and Qingling are indeed a little out of line, I don't know the inside story, and Nanyi is not at home right now. Your Majesty should grant marriage to these two people. The eldest princess spoke unhurriedly, and directly threw out a shocking news. I told the Ruan family's legitimate daughter about this before, and both mother and daughter should have you know, I mentioned this matter again in front of you today. It seems that the marriage of Qingling, a mere concubine, really makes Mrs. Tao uneasy. As soon as these words came out, the expressions of several princesses and ladies in Nuanting were surprised. What surprised Princess Jing was, why did your Majesty give them a marriage? A concubine and a medical girl actually alerted His Majesty to a marriage. Princess Huai was surprised. Qingling, a medical woman, is very favored by Her Majesty the Queen. Mrs. Chu was directly surprised by the matter itself. Her Majesty directly granted the marriage, which should be a good thing for both the Chu family and the Ruan family. Why does Mrs. Tao oppose it? The eldest princess smiled faintly, because the eldest daughter of the Ruan family married the son of Mr. Ye, the minister of the Ministry of Revenue. The Tao family wanted Qingling to marry into the Ye family as a dowry. Is there such a thing? Mrs. Chu frowned, her face was not very good. It is not that there has been no precedent for letting concubines marry as dowries for legitimate daughters, but it is a minority after all, and since Her Majesty intends to grant the marriage, is it better to marry into the Chu family than to marry into the Ye family as a concubine? This is not a question of whether there are benefits to marrying into the Chu family, but Mrs. Ruan does not regard concubines as human beings at all. The eldest princess said, Qingling's good life will make her unhappy, but now it seems that she insists on letting Qingling marry into the Ye family. There must be other reasons. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 683. Once this sentence came out, the others could not help but fall silent. Although the mistress of the house does need to be dignified, and most of the treatment of concubines and concubines will be somewhat harsh, and it is impossible to compare the treatment with the legitimate sons and daughters, but in the absence of grudges, simply not wanting the concubines to live well, this is no longer a question of whether there is dignity or not, but a narrow-mindedness and intolerance. Especially under the premise that His Majesty has already intended to grant the marriage, Tao Shi still does not give up, which makes people feel incomprehensible. The key to the matter should be the Ye family. Princess Jing thought, the Ruan family is also a noble family, and the family's prominence is more glorious than the Ye family, but without real power, it is inevitable that there will be some embarrassment in the marriage of their children. The noble family without real power will decline sooner or later. While there is still a title, it can still have a slight advantage in the marriage of their children, but this advantage is not obvious after all. Tao wanted her daughter to marry a prominent family, but her family was not qualified, so she had to lower her sights. The Ye family was in charge of the Ministry of Households, and it was indeed the best choice for the Ruan family at present. However, the Ye family openly proposed the request that sisters share one husband at this time, which was a bit too much. The status of the several princesses and wives in the warm pavilion were all noble, not to mention the eldest princess, the Princess of Jing and the Princess of Huai. In comparison, Mrs. Chu was not much inferior. As for coming to the Ruan family to participate in this flower viewing party today, it was originally out of boredom. At this time, they gathered together in their spare time and talked about the behavior of Mrs. Ruan of the Ruan family. They also discussed it casually, without much interest. After all, these had nothing to do with them. After all, Qingling was just a female doctor. Even if she came from the eldest princess's mansion, she was still a female doctor. Now that His Majesty has decided to grant the marriage, there is no need for others to discuss and pay too much attention. Anyway, it was useless for Ruan to not give up. How could His Majesty decide whether she was willing or not? Madame Chu said, if His Majesty really intends to grant a marriage, I have to prepare a courtyard for them to get married early and decorate it well. It can't be too shabby. How can the Chu family have a shabby courtyard? Princess Huai joked, but Madame is really devoted to Nan Yi, the illegitimate son, and I admire her very much. Mrs. Chu was modest, I'm too lazy to care too much. It's good that the children grow up normally. They haven't grown up crooked. My master and I are very relieved. What is Xianyi doing recently? Princess Huai frowned, it seems that I haven't heard from him for a long time. He is taking classes in the Imperial College. Madame Chu sighed, quite melancholy, His Majesty and the Regent are both going to ignore him for a while. The master simply let him stay in the Imperial College for the next 3 or 2 years to improve his knowledge and talk about it later. Ignore him for a while? Princess Jing was puzzled, why? Did Xianyi do something to displease His Majesty? That's not the case. Madame Chu shook her head, it's also because of Hong Yi. Although Hong Yi married Prince Ji because they were in love, Hong Yi holds military power, and Prince Jing's mansion is a legitimate royal family. The combination of the two makes people feel a little uneasy. Princess Jing fell silent. Madame Chu's words really touched her heart. Although many things should not be said so directly, otherwise it would be suspected of speculating on the emperor's intentions, but the fact is indeed so. A prominent family is sometimes really a double-edged sword. Your Majesty is wise, and the regent is also a rare enlightened prince since ancient times. Since they trust the Jingwang mansion and the Chu family, and even go so far as to grant the marriage, they certainly have no other intentions. But as ministers, we must not know how to restrain our edge. Mrs. Chu said, plus, Hong Ai has been favored by the emperor in the past 2 years, so Xuanyi can only be ignored for the time being. Princess Jing nodded slowly and drank a sip of tea quietly, thinking that her son had the same intention at the beginning. Hong Ai was in charge of the military power and served by His Majesty. In addition, the Jingwang mansion was already prominent, and after marrying the Chu family, it was in the limelight for a while and was favored by thousands. So Xianyu and Qi chose to stay at home and avoid the edge for the time being, but he didn't expect that he would still be appointed by His Majesty as the prince's tutor. The Chu family has Chu Hong'ai, a daughter who has become the daughter-in-law of the royal family, and Chu Nanyi, a bastard who listens to the regent's orders. It is indeed a bit too sharp. It is not quite reasonable to let the eldest son be ignored for the time being. But it's good this way. Xuanyi is a little unstable. Let him settle down in the Imperial College for 2 years. It won't be too late to serve your Majesty then. Mrs. Chu smiled, now I hope he can get married soon and give me a grandson. Seeing the princess holding her grandson, I'm so envious. Your Majesty and the regent are temporarily cold to Xuanyi, not because the Chu family is too powerful. The princess smiled gently, but Xuanyi sold Hong Ai in front of the regent, and Hong Ai took revenge directly after getting married. The brother and sister love and hate each other and fight in the nest. Your Majesty favors Hong Ai, so the regent naturally obeys your Majesty's orders and lets Xuanyi stay alone. Love and hate each other? Madame Chu and Princess Jing were both stunned. What do you mean? It's harmless to joke between siblings. The eldest princess laughed, but your Majesty and the regent know how to employ people. It's impossible to say that they are not partial to each other. Parents can't treat their own children equally, let alone the monarch and his subjects. Your Highness is right. Mrs. Chu nodded, that's what my master planned. Because Hong Ai holds the military power, it is considered a special honor. Xuanyi stayed in the Imperial College for 2 years, and 2 years later he passed the imperial examination and became an official. The steps are smaller, and we feel more at ease. Yes, who is a parent who doesn't want his son to honor his ancestors? It was a fact that Chu Hongii was favored, but all her future glory and power had already belonged to Prince Jing's mansion. After all, the Chu family's mansion still needed Chu Xuanyi, the eldest son, to support it. Just hearing what the eldest princess said, Mrs. Chu breathed a subtle sigh of relief. Of course she didn't dare to speculate on the holy will, but seeing that the legitimate son of the Xie family had a smooth career and became a celebrity in the imperial court, and the Prince of Huainan took over the military power, Prince Ji became the tutor, the concubine of Prince Jing's palace and the Prince of Wei's palace were both given important positions. Even Nan Yi often went to the palace and served as a servant to the emperor, but Chu Xuanyi still had nothing to say. How could she not have some thoughts in her heart? It's not that he's jealous, he's just worried that Xianyi might have displeased His Majesty, or that he offended the regent without knowing it and was left out in the cold. I want to know if Xianyi will have a chance to be reused in the future. After all, the Chu family will have to rely on Xuanyi's inheritance in the future. As a woman, she really can't be indifferent to fame and fortune. At this time, she really felt relieved when she heard from the eldest princess that it was a joke between the brother and sister. She believed in her daughter, and she believed that Hongyi was doing it for the sake of the Chu family, so there should be no harm in Xianyi's temporary silence. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 684. The princess and her friends didn't stay at Ruan's house for long. They chatted in the warm pavilion for a while and then went back to their houses. Mrs. Tao, her daughter, and other female relatives stood at the door to see them off warmly. When they returned to the princess's house, she said lightly, "Go and find out why the Ye family wants to marry Qingling." Yes. The shadow guard was very efficient. After the princess gave the order, she only rested for a while and drank a cup of tea when she returned to the house. The person who was ordered to investigate the case came back, kneeling in front of her in black clothes. "Young Master Ye has a hidden illness." The princess was surprised and almost spit out the tea in her mouth. She looked at the calm man in front of her in astonishment. Hidden illness. The shadow guard's name is Yinfen, which is a new name given by the princess after he woke up. It represents a new life for two people. The name doesn't have any special meaning. I just think it sounds good and call it casually. The shadow guard, who is in his 30s this year, can no longer compare to his golden age in terms of physical strength, of course, only compared to his previous golden age. The shadow guards who have been trained for a long time are still strong and cannot be underestimated even if their physical strength has deteriorated. Ordinary warriors are not his opponents at all, and they are more than enough to protect the princess. In addition to physical strength, their age is no longer suitable for romance. After years of wind and rain, quiet companionship is the most suitable way for them. The princess likes the feeling of being with him, enjoying the unconditional obedience of such a person around her, and the appearance is also pleasing to the eye. The most important thing is that he will not have any other thoughts, clean and pure, without so many tricks, and it is worry-free to get along with him. This person does not even have strong 7 emotions and 6 desires, and rarely expresses his thoughts actively. Mr. Ye has a hidden disease, and dare not tell others, so he wants Miss Qingling to marry him, and plans to kill her after curing the hidden disease. The simple and neat 2 sentences explained all the reasons, without emotional ups and downs, just stating the facts. However, these 2 simple sentences made the princess' face turn cold. Silence. Yes, Yinfen nodded. Most of the female doctors who came out of the palace are proficient in diseases that are difficult to talk about, and treating hidden diseases is no problem. Master Ye doesn't want people to know that he has a hidden disease, so he is planning to take advantage of Miss Qingling. Yinfen explained as much as possible. He used to be taciturn and didn't say a word all day. Occasionally, he needed to report serious matters, but he didn't say more than 2 sentences. There were few times when he had to explain like this. Now he has learned to express himself with words around the princess. I don't know if he is worried that the master won't understand, or he doesn't want the master to waste too much time thinking. Every time he is asked about something, he always subconsciously explains a few more sentences. Gradually, it became a habit. The princess looked ugly, and a cold look appeared between her eyebrows. She didn't speak for a long time. Yinfen lowered his eyebrows and was silent for a while. Feeling the master's displeasure, he turned around and took the tea set without saying a word, and skillfully boiled water and brewed tea. The princess looked up and saw Yinfen fiddling with the teacup, waiting for the water to boil. The man's sharp features should have been as sharp as a knife, but he looked submissive and obedient because of his focused posture with his eyebrows lowered. The princess leaned against the railing and watched quietly, her emotions slowly calming down. Yinfen's tea-making skills are good, and every move is as pleasing to the eye as flowing clouds and water. In the past few months, he has often shown his skills, and his calmness gives people a feeling of living in seclusion in the mountains away from the world. The princess watched his movements quietly, but she already understood the family's plan in her heart. Yinfen actually said it clearly enough. The son of the family has a hidden illness but is ashamed of it, so he has not sought a doctor so far. Because he does not believe that the doctor will help him keep the secret, or even if the doctor can help him keep the secret, there is still one person in the world who knows that he once had a hidden illness. The doctor is a living person, and silencing him without authorization is a crime of murder. If Qingling, the concubine of the Ruan family, was married as a dowry with the legitimate daughter, then this concubine would naturally become the concubine of the family's son. Since she was a concubine, there was no need to care about the difference between men and women when treating illnesses. Moreover, in many people's minds, concubines were men's private property and could be disposed of at will. Therefore, after Qingling was married, even if she cured Mr. Yes' hidden illness and was killed, no one would investigate the cause of her death. It seemed very casual, but it was actually a perfect plan. If Qingling had not had feelings for Chu Nanyi, if Qingling had not been taken into the palace by the princess because of her young age, and later arranged to serve Nangzi in the palace, if Nangzi had not liked to be a matchmaker and liked to grant marriages to let lovers finally get married, or if Chu Nanyi was not the confidant of the regent, Qingling's marriage would not be enough for Her Majesty the Queen to intervene. Then in the end, Qingling, this beautiful girl, would probably really be sold to the family by her inhumane stepmother because of the extra betrothal gift from the family, and then quietly disappear one day in a conspiracy that she didn't even know about. The water boiled. The steam curled up, blurring the sharp eyebrows and eyes. It was really pleasing to watch Yinfen brew tea. The princess didn't say anything, just watched quietly until a cup of tea was presented in front of her. She reached out to take it, and said in a faint voice, "I'm used to drinking the tea you brew, and my mouth has been spoiled. Your Highness likes it, and I will brew it for you every day." The princess took a sip of tea and smiled gently, "Then brew it for a lifetime." "For a lifetime." Yinfen lowered his eyebrows, and a silent throbbing surged in his heart. Yes. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 685. The princess did not interfere too much in Qingling's affairs. After attending the Ruan family's flower viewing banquet, she stayed in the princess's mansion for several days and did not go out. She watched flowers with Yinfen, drank tea, and chatted. The weather was getting colder day by day. The closer it got to the 12th lunar month, the colder it was. The noble ladies in the imperial capital also reduced their movements. They stayed in the house all day to keep warm by the charcoal fire. When they needed to go out occasionally, they all wrapped themselves in fur coats to keep warm, holding hand warmers, shivering with cold, and even maintaining the most basic demeanor was a bit difficult. When the cold wind blew, the skin was frozen pale, and even the beautiful and moving appearance was reduced a little luster. Qingling stayed quietly in the Dajhan palace, decocting 2 tablets of medicine for the regent every day and bringing them over. She felt relieved only when she saw the regent drink them. The medicinal bath every 3 days started after the acupuncture, which was always done at night. Her Majesty the Queen was there, and the medicinal bath that had just been adjusted after the acupuncture was ready. Qingling tested the water temperature and retreated. When the regent was taking the medicinal bath, Her Majesty the Queen accompanied him and chatted with him, and discussed what had happened in the past few days. The days passed uneventfully for a few days. On the 6th day of the 12th lunar month, Lord Ruan's 45th birthday came, and a birthday banquet was to be held in the mansion. As a daughter, Qingling should go back to celebrate her father's birthday. Tao had passed the message to the palace through Lord Ye, and Qingling had to go back. It happened that acupuncture was done last night and the medicinal bath was also done. The next medicinal bath will be in 3 days. It doesn't matter if Qingling takes a day off, as long as she rushes back to decoct the medicine before dusk. After presenting the morning medicine, Rong Yu did not make things difficult for her. He took the medicine and drank it, and called Yinshuang and Xingyang in. Today, the Zipping Marquis's mansion is holding a birthday banquet. You two go pick a decent gift and take it to the Zipping Marquis mansion with Qingling. Xingyang agreed, yes. Qingling respectfully thanked the king for his grace, and took Xingyang to pick a large coral tree and left the palace. Nan 11 came back from the court, turned her head and looked several times, and confirmed that there were 3 familiar faces missing from the Dajhan palace. She looked at Rong Yu strangely. Where are they? Rong Yu raised his hand to take off her cloak, and handed it to Yin Yu. Today is the birthday of the Zipping Marquis. Tao asked someone to bring a message to the palace. I asked Qingling to go back. Nan 11 walked to the brocade couch in front of the window and sat down. She reached out to take the fragrant tea presented by the palace maid and took a sip. Yinshuang and Xingyang also went with you. Yes, Rong Yu nodded. I asked Xingyang to pick a gift to take over. Does 11ER have any other instructions? Her Majesty looked at him. No instructions. Did you take your medicine on time? Yes, Rong Yu nodded obediently. Do you think Qingling will leave so easily? I can't help but suspect that she is a spy sent by you to monitor me. Nan 11 laughed. Just treat her as a spy. Rong Yu also laughed, and was about to reach out and put Nan 11 in his arms, but saw Yin Yu come in and report, Your Majesty, Chu Nanyi wants to see you. Nan 11 turned her head in surprise. He came back so coincidentally. Qingling had just left Dajhan Palace not long ago, and Chu Nanyi came back. But Nan 11 calculated the days. Chu Nanyi said that he had been away for 8 or 9 days, and coming back at this time, well, it was indeed a coincidence. Rong Yu turned around and sat down next to Nan 11, and said lightly, let him in. Chu Nanyi stepped into Dajhan Palace and paid homage to Her Majesty the Queen and the Regent. It was freezing cold outside. Even Rong Yu, a recognized tough man, had been wearing warm clothes all day long under Nan 11's mandatory request these past 2 days, and was not allowed to be blown by the cold wind. However, Chu Nanyi, who had just returned from outside, was only wearing a light blue robe, which made him look out of place in the cold winter season. He looked elegant and graceful, like an immortal. Stand-up Nan 11 looked at him for a while, thinking that the biting weather outside was probably fake. Look at the cool and elegant Chu family master in front of him. Today is Qingling's father's birthday. Did you get the news? Not in advance, Chu Nanyi replied. I only learned about this after entering the imperial city, and by the way, I got some news from Her Royal Highness the Princess. Nan 11 was puzzled. What news? Chu Nanyi's tone was respectful, but his expression was slightly cold, the reason why the Ye family insisted on letting Qingling marry. Nan 11 raised her eyebrows and subconsciously wanted to ask what the reason was. However, Chu Nanyi's obviously unhappy expression made her think about something. Such unhappy emotions probably touched his bottom line. Nan 11 didn't have the habit of breaking the casserole to ask the bottom, so she suppressed the doubts in her heart and said lightly, "Since you already know that Zipping Beau's birthday banquet is today, you might as well go to the door to give a gift. If there is anything inconvenient, let Xiejin go with you." Chu Nanyi thanked him. "I will grant you an imperial edict." Nan 11 smiled lightly, "It can be regarded as icing on the cake for Zipping Beau." Chu Nanyi knelt down to thank him. "I thank your majesty for your grace." "You are welcome," Nan 11 said lightly, "taking care of your master's health is the greatest reward for me." Chu Nanyi said, "Your majesty, rest assured, I will do my best." Rong Yu sat aside, quietly making a beautiful ornament. After leaving the Dajhan palace, Chu Nanyi went out of the palace and returned to the mansion to change clothes. He picked a few gifts from the warehouse. As soon as he walked out of the Chu family's gate, he saw Xiejin's handsome face with a smile that made him want to be beaten. A pair of fox eyes are charming, and the smile on the corner of his lips is a bit teasing. "Mr. Chu, are you going to celebrate the birthday of your future father-in-law?" Chu Nanyi paused slightly. "What are you doing here?" "I'll go with you to join in the fun." Xiejin put his hand on his shoulder, and the two walked towards the carriage like brothers. "I'm worried that you've suffered a loss in the Ruan family, so I'm going to support you." "Are you touched?" Chu Nanyi waved his claws away. "Don't touch me, be careful that Prince Yao sees you, and you'll be punished by the family rules." Xiejin paused, then jumped into the carriage naturally, stretched out his hand to hold the reins. "You are really an ungrateful guy." Chu Nanyi stretched out his hand to lift the curtain, put all the gifts in the carriage, and he and Xiejin sitting on the left and right in front of the carriage. "You are going to the birthday banquet empty-handed?" "I am going empty-handed to give him face. Why do I need to bring any gifts?" Xiejin threw off the reins and rushed towards the West City. "But I am a polite person, how could I really be empty-handed?" As he said, he patted his chest with one hand. "The gift is here." Chu Nanyi sat in front of the carriage, silent for a while, and said lightly, "If there is a conflict later, don't do it, I will do it myself." "Conflict?" Xiejin looked at him with interest. "Are you going to celebrate the birthday of your future father-in-law, or are you going to fight?" "Today's birthday banquet may mean a calculation for Qingling," Chu Nanyi said in a light tone, "but I have someone watching. If something unexpected happens, I don't mind turning a happy event into a funeral." Xiejin smiled nonchalantly. "If someone really bullies you, can I sit back and do nothing?" "Don't worry about it," Chu Nanyi said in a light tone, "I can handle it myself." "How do you want to deal with it?" Chu Nanyi didn't say anything, he had his own solution. "Are you worried that I will be impeached?" Chu Nanyi said, "You are now an official appointed by the court. You must be cautious in what you say and do. You can't be as unscrupulous as before. Especially he is in charge of the Ministry of Justice. If even the Minister of Justice can't control his own words and deeds, how can he be qualified to deal with criminals who behave improperly?" Xiejin was silent for a moment, and a smile appeared on the corner of his lips. "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 686. As a daughter, Qingling came back earlier than the guests. She went home to clean up, change clothes, and prepare to welcome the guests, although she, a concubine, did not need to greet any guests at all. But with her aunt's arrangement, she could only deal with it for the time being. After all, it was hard to cause any unpleasantness at her father's birthday party. When Chu Nanyi and Xiejin arrived, only a few people came outside the Ruan family's gate. The servants of the uncle's house drove the guests' carriages to the backyard, and the housekeeper and servants warmly welcomed the guests in. Chu Nanyi moved all the gifts from the carriage and asked Xiejin to get him a few. However, they were stopped as soon as they reached the gate. Invitation. Chu Nanyi smiled lightly, there is no invitation. You can't go in without an invitation, the servant said arrogantly. Do you know whose mansion this is? Zipingbo Mansion, the home of honorable nobles. Why are you here to join in the fun without an invitation? Come on, hurry up. Don't stay here, get in the way. Xiejin really wanted to laugh. As the legitimate son of the Xie family, although he dare not say how noble he is, he has never received such treatment in the land outside the palace and within the imperial city. It was his first time to come to Zipingbo's mansion. It was quite far away from the Xie family's residence. One was located in a prime location in the center of the imperial city, and the other was far away on West Street. The location was enough to highlight the status gap between the two mansions. However, he was not angry and simply said, I am Xiejin. No matter what you are thanking. The servants of the Ruan family were about to send him away, but suddenly their expressions changed, and they looked up at the noble and handsome young master in front of them in shock. You. Master Xiejin, come to wish Uncle Zipping a birthday. Xiejin mentioned the congratulatory gift in his hand with a leisurely and calm expression. Can you come in? Yes, it's okay. The servant stammered, nodded, and bowed. Thank you, master. The housekeeper came forward and personally led Xiejin and Chu Nanyi towards the main hall. Xiejin clicked his tongue, and the two of them swaggered into the Ruan family's gate. When they walked to a place with few people, Xiejin said lightly, I didn't expect that the young master would be so arrogant sometimes. The housekeeper didn't know whether he heard it or not. He respectfully guided the two of them until they entered the main hall and announced, Uncle, Madam, Mr. Xie has arrived. Master Xie, Uncle Zipping was surprised. Which Master Xie? In addition to Uncle Zipping and his wife, there was another middle-aged man in the hall who was an official of the imperial court. Xiejin couldn't help but raise his eyebrows at the first glance. By chance, the man also turned his head and stood up in surprise. Mr. Xie. Xiejin stepped across the threshold and nodded to the man who spoke, Master Ye. Mr. Ye is the Minister of Household Affairs. He is sitting and discussing the marriage between the two families with Uncle Zipping. When he sees Xiejin coming, he doesn't know whether he is surprised or happy. He can't help but look at Uncle Zipping. I didn't expect that the legitimate son of the Xie family is also here. It's really surprising that my uncle is here to support me. When Mr. Ye was talking to Xiejin, Uncle Zipping also saw Xiejin. The expression on his face was extremely surprised. After listening to Mr. Ye's words, his face felt even brighter, and he couldn't hide the smile on his face. Thank you for coming. It's really a blessing. Uncle Zipping, you're welcome. Xiejin handed over the congratulatory gift in his hand. This is a little thought from Mr. Chu, and I wish your uncle to be as blessed as the East China Sea and live longer than the southern mountains. I hope he will accept it. Uncle Zipping accepted it with a smile. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming, sir. I am very happy. It doesn't matter if you are polite or not. Mr. Chu, Mrs. Ruan glanced at Chu Nanyi standing by Xiejin, and her face changed slightly. Why are you here too? Chu Nanyi smiled gently. Come down to wish my uncle a birthday. Madam, don't you welcome me? Xiejin looked at Mrs. Ruan in surprise. When, seeing Xiejin staring at her, Mrs. Ruan smiled uncomfortably. Take a seat, Kong and take Mr. Xie and Mr. Chu to the table. Ruan Kong nodded and walked out with Xiejin and Chu Nanyi. What's wrong? Mrs. Ye looked at Mrs. Ruan in confusion. You don't seem happy. Mrs. Ruan came back to her senses and smiled awkwardly. Nothing. Where were we talking about just now? Oh, speaking of the betrothal gift. According to the original double betrothal gift, an additional 5,000 taels of silver will be added. Mrs. Ye smiled faintly. Do you think this is appropriate, uncle and madam? Mrs. Ruan secretly calculated in her heart that the betrothal gift given by the Ye family was so generous that the real money and silver alone would be enough for the Ruan family to survive the current predicament and still have something left over. Moreover, if her daughter marries Mr. Ye, Mr. Ye will be her in-laws from now on, so she can give it to Kang at will. His future problem can be solved by arranging an errand for his son. Moreover, the marriage must be settled early, before Her Majesty the Queen decrees the marriage. In this way, it will not be considered as resistance to the decree. If she waits until the decree is issued, it will be too late. Mrs. Tao then nodded, let's set the date on the 16th of this month. What do you think, Mrs. Ye? Mrs. Ye nodded. The two families had settled their marriage here, but at this time, on a remote corridor in the Ruan family's backyard, a man blocked Qingling's path. Are you Ruan Qingling, the concubine of the Ruan family? Qingling frowned and looked at the man in front of her with some displeasure. Men and women are not intimate, please don't block my way. The man stopped in front of Qingling and did not intend to give way. Miss Qingling is a medical woman. Qingling frowned, get out of the way. A woman should be dignified and elegant, docile and virtuous. Instead of having such a bad temper. Seeing her bad attitude, the man's expression turned cold. Is this the kind of rules you learned in the palace? Qingling looked at him in disbelief after hearing this. Who are you? Are you sick? I am your husband. Qingling's face changed slightly, and she said coldly, please be careful with your words, young master. My last name is Ye. Qingling pursed her lips and said firmly, I will not marry you. It is inappropriate for young Master Ye to say this. It is not up to you to decide whether to marry or not. Young Master Ye raised his hand, his voice slightly gloomy. I heard from Madame Ruan that you are unwilling to cooperate. I have no choice. Miss Qingling, please don't blame me. After the voice fell, the two guards behind him stepped forward and grabbed Qingling's hand. What are you doing? Qingling's face suddenly changed, and she subconsciously took a step back to avoid the grip of the Ye family's guards. If you dare to mess around, I will be rude. You're welcome. Mr. Ye looked at her with interest. I want to know how rude you will be. Qingling bit her lips tightly and stared at the two people in front of her warily. Suddenly, she heard an imperceptible command in her ears, run to the northwest yard. Qingling was startled, and then turned around and ran to the northwest without any hesitation. Although she was a woman, she was not weak. In a hurry, she ran fast. Mr. Ye and his two guards saw her turn around and run. They were stunned for a while before they reacted and hurried to chase her. Seeing the direction Qingling ran away, Mr. Ye smiled coldly and said confidently, don't chase too closely, I still want to play with her. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 687. Although there is a row of wing rooms in the northwest courtyard, no one lives there, and not a single person can be seen in the entire courtyard. After Qingling ran in, seemingly in a panic, she opened a door and hid in. However, Mr. Ye and his two guards quickly followed. Seeing Qingling enter the wing, Mr. Ye smiled. A little more cheerful. Instructing the two of them to guard the door, he said, don't let anyone in. Yes. Mr. Ye opened the door and walked in, closing the door behind him. Miss Qingling he stood behind the door, looking at the girl hiding behind the bed, his voice softened, you don't have to be too afraid, I won't do anything to you. Qingling said coldly, don't come here, otherwise I won't be polite to you. Mr. Ye smiled and said, the Ye family asked you to dowry, but you didn't want to, and I didn't want things to get out of control, so I had to do this, and it was approved by your aunt, so if you want to blame, don't blame me. I already have a sweetheart, and I will not agree to marry you. Qingling said firmly, if Mr. Ye dares to force me, you can't afford the consequences. Ha ha ha. Mr. Ye laughed happily to himself as if he had heard some interesting joke. Miss Jingling is really interesting to talk about. Don't tell me, you are much cuter than your sister-in-law. To be honest, if you were my sister-in-law, girl, I will definitely marry you as my wife without any hesitation. Jingling stood silently behind the bed, turning the bracelet on her wrist calmly. There is no need to cook the rice today. As long as people know that we are in the same room and have skin-to-skin contact, you will have to marry me. Mr. Ye walked over, walking slowly step by step, as if he was deliberately creating pressure. And panic, do you want me to call someone over now? Jingling took a step back. Come. Mr. Ye stretched out his hand towards her, as long as you take the initiative to come here, I promise to love you well in the future. You'd better take good care of yourself. As these words fell, the door was kicked open with a bang, and then a figure flew in. Mr. Ye turned his head subconsciously. Who? There was only a glimpse of blue clothes in his sight, and then his wrists hurt. He let out a scream and fell to the ground with his hands folded. Ah! Jingling was pulled into a warm and gentle embrace, with the wind whistling in her ears, and he took her out of the wing without stopping for a moment. The two Ye family guards outside had fallen to the ground unconsciously. They didn't know whether they were dead or fainted. Jingling stayed quietly in Chu Nanyi's arms. She left the northwest courtyard without seeing a single figure, but when she arrived in front there will be more people in the hospital. She looked at Chu Nanyi nervously. Don't worry. Chu Nanyi comforted her, we will go directly to your yard from the back door. Jingling fell silent and nodded. Are you scared? Chu Nanyi felt a little distressed. Sorry, I came a little late. It's okay. Jingling slowly shook her head and showed him the bracelet on her hand. Even if you don't come, I'm not afraid. The bracelet you gave me will just come in handy. Chu Nanyi kissed her forehead. I know you are the best. Jingling's delicate face was slightly red. Chu Nanyi sent Jingling to the yard where she lived through the back door and asked her to sit in the house honestly. Sit here and don't go out. Don't pay attention to anything going on outside. Chu Nanyi brought her a book. The guests outside haven't arrived yet. Even if they have arrived, you don't have to deal with it. Don't worry if you hear any noise later. Pay attention. Jingling hummed, be careful. Chu Nanyi touched her head and smiled gently, don't worry. Turning around and walking out of the room, he calmly ordered, guard here and don't allow anyone to disturb her. Yes. Chu Nanyi's eyebrows turned cold, and he turned back to the northwest courtyard. He walked into the wing room without disturbing anyone. Young Master Ye was still there. Chu Nanyi was not surprised at all that the other party hadn't left yet, because he couldn't leave at the moment and couldn't even say a word. How is Mr. Ye feeling now? Chu Nanyi walked over slowly, squatted down in front of him, and looked at him gently. Does it hurt? Mr. Ye's face was pale, with cold sweat on his forehead, and a pleading sound came from his throat. If you listened carefully, it sounded more like a wail. Jingling has obviously told you that she has a sweetheart. If you force her, you can't afford the consequences. Chu Nanyi curled her lips and smiled. Young Master Ye, don't believe what she said. Ye Gongza shook his head crazily. Then I will use practical actions to convince you. You don't want. Let me go. Chu Nanyi pulled out a dagger from his boot with an extremely graceful and gentle movement. It had a delicate and beautiful appearance, and the scabbard was embedded with fine rubies. It was obvious at a glance that it was worth a lot of money. Chu Nanyi pulled out the sharp dagger blade with a cold light and threw away the beautiful dagger sheath. I heard that young Master Ye has a hidden illness. Woo-oh. Then how about making you inhumane forever? Chu Nanyi smiled faintly, looked at Mr. Ye's fearful eyes, and put the dagger close to his lower body with great tenderness. By the way, since your engagement with the Ruan family's legitimate daughter has been concluded, If she is married, then get married as soon as possible, don't delay any more, and marry her to bring happiness to you. Mr. Ye was almost scared out of his wits and kept shaking his head, let me go. Let me go. But his body had no strength at all, as if he was pinned to the ground by something. He couldn't escape even if he wanted to. He could only shake his head again and again. Unfortunately, Chu Nanyi didn't know whether it was because he couldn't understand his eyes or because I pretended to be stupid on purpose, just because I didn't want to let him go. Qingling is the girl I like. Chu Nanyi looked at him, do you understand? Mr. Ye nodded eagerly. Being inhumane is a trivial matter and can be cured, but if you have a disease in your heart, it will be difficult for gods to save you. Chu Nanyi patted his face with a dagger, which was not harmful but full of threats. In view of your disrespectful remarks today, it's such a smart move. I won't hurt your life, I'll give you a small punishment but a big warning. The dagger changed its place and was placed directly on his injured wrist. Chu Nanyi's voice became gentler and as sweet as spring breeze, your hands will hurt for 15 days every month from now on. There is no antidote. You will behave better in half a year after that. If I think you can be saved, I will give you the antidote. If I think you are hopeless, you will have no choice but to die. Do you understand? After leaving the sentence, he didn't care whether the man understood it or not, he got up and walked out. Whoa! Chu Nanyi didn't even look back, someone will come to save you. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 688. The front yard gradually became lively. Guests came into the house one after another, sent congratulatory gifts, said a few birthday wishes, and were immediately arranged to sit down. The older people sit together and talk about officialdom, sons and family and country affairs, the younger people sit together and talk about elegance, career and beauties. During the dinner, cups were exchanged, glasses were exchanged, and the atmosphere was lively. Xiejin naturally sat at the table of young people, and several children from aristocratic families automatically gave up their seats to him. Xiejin was not polite, and the old man sat and drank comfortably. The young people on the left and right had never had any dealings with him, but now they couldn't wait to get in touch with him and toasted him one after another. Especially Ruan Kong, the legitimate son of the Ruan family, holding the wine glass, almost wanted to thank him. Go up to Jin. Thank you, master. I'll toast you and ask for your advice in the future. Xiejin glanced at him and took a sip from the wine glass. As for giving advice, he really had no interest in giving advice to someone who couldn't hold up the wall and was full of mess. Master Xie is really young and promising. He has taken the position of Minister of the Ministry of Justice at such a young age. It is really admirable. Yes, Mr. Chief Assistant has taught you well. Mr. Xie has outstanding abilities and his future is limitless. Xiejin modestly said, they are all promoted by Her Majesty the Queen and the Prince Regent. Over there, Mr. Ye, Mr. Wang, and a few county princes who could no longer be named were also holding wine glasses, and they took turns toasting, for fear that they would be robbed of the opportunity by others. Seeing that his birthday banquet was stolen from the limelight by the 20-year-old Xie family's heir, Uncle Zipping's face was already a little ugly, but he suddenly heard a voice during the dinner, where is Chang'er? Uncle Zipping was stunned. Master Ye looked around, but didn't see his son, and frowned slightly. Chang'er came with me, where are you now? Uncle Zipping also felt strange and looked at his son. Kong have you seen Mr. Ye? Of course Ruankong knew that he was the one who led Mr. Ye to the Northwest Hospital in order to create a chance encounter with Qingling. He should have succeeded by now. Now if you take someone with you, you will definitely see some wonderful things, just enough to make the two of you happy. He gestured and thought for a while. I just saw Mr. Ye heading towards the northwest courtyard. Mr. Ye, my nephew will take you to look for him. Lord Ye nodded. It's not good. It's not good, a boy ran over in a panic. Something happened to Mr. Ye. Mr. Ye was startled and stood up. What happened? Tell me quickly. The boy's face was pale, and his expression was frightened. Yeah, Master Ye, you should go and see for yourself. During the dinner, the guests realized that something was abnormal and looked at each other for a while. What happened? I don't know. Let's go over and have a look. Let's go and take a look. Uncle 11 Ping had an ominous premonition in his mind, and he and Mr. Ye headed straight to the wing room in the northwest courtyard under the guidance of the servant. The group of people hurried to the northwest courtyard and saw two people lying outside one of the rooms. Master Ye recognized that these were the guards beside his son. He was suddenly startled and stretched out his hand to push open the door. What happened? Mrs. Ruan pushed aside the crowd and hurried into the room. Is it Qingling? Chang Mr. Ye was shocked. He quickly stepped forward to help Ye Chang up and asked angrily, what's going on? Who did this? Ye Chang was so painful that he could not speak. Mrs. Ruan's expression suddenly changed. She looked left and right but didn't see Qingling, who was supposed to be here. The fact that Mr. Ye looked like he was seriously injured made her heart sink, and her uneasy premonition became stronger and stronger. Come here. Go and ask Qingling to come over, Uncle Zipping immediately ordered. Go quickly. After giving the instructions, he explained to Master Ye, Qingling is a medical woman. Let her come over to diagnose and treat Mr. Ye to see what the problem is. Mrs. Ye hurriedly knelt down next to her son, her face pale and anxious. Chang how are you? Men and women are not intimate, so it wouldn't be appropriate for Miss Qingling to come over and see young Master Ye for his injuries. Xie Jin walked across the threshold unhurriedly and glanced at Ye Chang's condition casually. Young Master Ye should be fine, that is, your hand is slightly injured, and there is a bit of paralyzing poison on the wound, so don't be too alarmed. Mr. Xie, are you serious about what you said? Mr. Ye stood up. Chang'er is really nothing serious. Xie Jin said, I judge that there should be no serious problem. If Mr. Ye is worried, you might as well ask someone to go outside and ask a doctor to come in and take a look at him. Miss Qingling is a woman after all, so it is inconvenient. Qingling is about to marry into the Ye family. There is no inconvenience, Mrs. Zippingbo said, ask Qingling to come over quickly. Miss Qingling is about to marry into the Ye family. Xie Jin raised his eyebrows. I'm afraid this won't work. As soon as these words came out, not only the Zippingbo couple and the Ye family couple were surprised, but also the people who came to watch were also stunned. What's the meaning? Under the gaze of more than a dozen pairs of eyes, Xie Jin calmly took out a bright yellow scroll from his arms. Uncle Zipping listens to the order. Seeing this bright yellow color, the expressions of everyone present changed, and then they all knelt down with a bang, and they all bowed to the ground in panic. Your Majesty has decreed that Ruan Qingling, the concubine of the Zipping Prefecture, is intelligent, kind, knowledgeable, and sensible. He specially gives Chu Nanyi, the concubine of the Chu family, as his wife. They will get married on a selected day. I appreciate this. There was silence in the wing. Long live, long live, long live, a clear and respectful voice sounded outside the door. I thank your Majesty for your grace. Everyone subconsciously turned their heads to look. Wasn't the one kneeling outside the door the other person in the decree, Chu Nanyi, the illegitimate son of the Chu family? Lord Zipping, please accept the decree. Xie Jin put away the decree and handed it to the stiff-faced Lord Zipping. So my master said that men and women should not touch each other. Lord Zipping should agree. Lord Zipping stretched out his trembling hand to take the decree. I agree, Mr. Xie is right, I accept the decree. Thank you, the Queen, for your grace. Tao froze on the spot, as if all the strength in her body had been drained, and she couldn't say a word. She and Madame Ye had just discussed the marriage and planned to get married when they got married. With an imperial decree, all the betrothal gifts were declared to be gone. What on earth is going on? Obviously Qingling should appear here. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 689. The air was quiet for a moment. When Uncle Zipping took over the imperial edict, Xiejin looked around and said calmly, "Everyone, please get up. I came uninvited today just to convey the imperial edict. I just wanted to choose a time when the atmosphere was good to give it to Uncle Zipping to put the icing on the cake and add joy to the joy. I didn't expect that Mr. Ye would suddenly have an accident, which shocked everyone, so please forgive me." "It's okay, it's important to pass the decree," an adult said quickly, "but it's really more than happy. Miss Qingling must be very favored and valued by His Majesty in the palace, so she can get the honor of being granted marriage by the imperial decree. Congratulations, Uncle Grandpa, congratulations to Uncle. Your Majesty personally granted the marriage, but it is an honor and favor that many young men and noble ladies from aristocratic families cannot ask for. Your Majesty really loves Miss Qingling very much, which is really enviable. My uncle should be happy to have such a daughter." Uncle 11 Ping's face was still a bit stiff. He had not fully accepted this sudden fact, so he could only smile and said, "Same joy." Mrs. Tao hated her so much that her teeth were almost broken, but she had to put on a forced smile on her face. "You sir, you are too flattering. Qingling is just a medical woman. Your Majesty is just flattering her. What follows is nothing more than the usual routine in official circles, where you flatter me and flatter each other, which is really boring." Xiejin listened boredly for a while. His eyes fell on the two obviously different colored faces of Uncle Zipping and his wife, and quickly moved away. When Uncle Zipping ordered people to go outside the house to invite a doctor to Mr. Ye, he said lightly, "The wine has been drunk, the gifts have been sent, and the imperial edict has been delivered. It is time for me to return to the palace to deliver my errands. My lords, please stay here while I take my leave." Then he turned to look at Chu Nanyi. "Your Majesty ordered you and Miss Qingling to run the women's thatched cottage, please hurry up and don't waste too much time." Chu Nanyi smiled lightly, "I'll keep it all in mind. The regent has been suffering from cold for the past 2 days, and she needs Qingling decoction to serve her." Xiejin said to Uncle Zipping, "Please let her return to the palace as soon as possible and don't delay for too long." After leaving these words, he turned and left. 11 Pingbo responded repeatedly. In the West Pingbo mansion, even if there is no real power, there is no need to be so respectful to Xiejin, but today Xiejin is here on behalf of His Majesty, and he does not dare to be disrespectful. The second young master of Chu is also young and promising. An adult's eyes fell on Chu Nan's clothes and he took the initiative to greet him. "I heard that the legitimate son of the Chu family has not yet been married. I didn't expect that your Majesty would give the second young master a hand in marriage first. It seems that your Majesty the Prince Regent also has special regard for the second young master." Chu Nanyi smiled lightly, "Brother, I haven't met the right person yet. For now, I will focus on my studies. In the future, I will also enter an official career to serve His Majesty." "Thank you, Mr. Wang, for your concern. The second young master Chu is a man of great talent and has a great demeanor. He really doesn't look like a bastard." A little-known prince praised him. "I didn't pay much attention to it before, but today I realized that someone was born with this talent. It's just suitable for doing big things, regardless of status." "Doing something big," Chu Nanyi smiled slightly, What big thing does the prince think this junior is doing? Didn't Mr. Xie just now say that His Majesty asked you and Miss Jingling to set up a women's thatched cottage? Isn't this a big deal? Chu Nanyi said, because I know a little bit about medical skills. Young Master Chu is proficient in medical skills. Mr. Ye perked up and said quickly, then, could you please second young Master Chu to diagnose Quan Zi and see what's going on with him? It was clearly Chu Nanyi who said somewhat understood, but upon hearing Master Ye's ears, it automatically became proficient. Chu Nanyi looked indifferent and didn't say anything. He walked up to Mr. Ye, and Mr. Ye saw Chu Nanyi. His pupils suddenly shrank, and he subconsciously opened his mouth to shout, but Chu Nanyi only smiled faintly, and his eyes fell on his wrist. Is Mr. Ye injured? Mr. Ye was speechless. He could only make a woo sound in his throat, with obvious fear and uneasiness in his eyes. Young Master Ye is fine, Chu Nanyi said. There were some flesh wounds on both wrists, and some paralyzing medicine was applied to the wounds. Just go back and rest quietly for a few days. Master Ye was surprised. How many days can you rest quietly? Don't you need to prescribe medicine? No need, Chu Nanyi nodded, but this injury is quite serious. It looks like it was done by a master, and the force was very well controlled. If it were a little deeper, the meridians would be cut off directly. I don't know Mr. Ye who did this offend. When Ye Chang heard this, his expression suddenly changed, and his heart suddenly fell into the eye cellar. Meridians broken? He seemed to realize the danger just belatedly. If the wound had been deeper, he would be a cripple now, and... He swallowed, feeling cold all over. Thinking of what Chu Nanyi said when he put the dagger under him, his face turned pale. At this moment, he looked at this gentle young man like he was looking at a demon. Is he a master? Yes, he injured his wrist silently and with such precision. He must be a master who hides his secrets. It's terrible and terrifying. Mr. Ye. Chu Nanyi looked at him gently. Who hurt you just now? Do you see clearly? Ye Chang shook his head in fear. Didn't you see it? Mr. Ye frowned. How could you not see it? Then why are you here? Ye Chang still shook his head. He didn't know anything. Master Ye, please be patient. Chu Nanyi stood up. Master Ye may have been frightened, but it's nothing serious. Master Ye asked the servants at home to take him back first. He should be able to recover after resting for 3 or 2 days. It's business as usual. Seriously, Mr. Ye was suspicious, still feeling a little uneasy, but he looks very. Dr. Tan is here. Let Dr. Tan show Mr. Ye. Everyone quickly moved out of the way, and Dr. Tan, who came with a medicine box, was led into the side room by servants of the Ruan family. He looked at the pale Mr. Ye with a solemn expression. After a thorough inspection, he sighed softly, it's nothing serious. Master Ye finally breathed a sigh of relief. However, after he breathed a sigh of relief, he began to think about pursuing the murderer who injured his son. Lord Ye turned to look at Uncle 11 Ping with a gloomy expression. Chang'er can't speak now, but he was assassinated in the Ruan family. I hope you can give me an explanation. Tao's face changed slightly, and she lowered her head and cursed Qingling, that little bitch, for causing trouble for her. Uncle Zipping looked apologetic. I'm really sorry. It's my fault. I will definitely find out about this matter and give Mr. Ye an explanation. Let's wait until Mr. Ye has found out the details of the matter before asking. There is no one else here, and Mr. Ye can't tell anything. I'm afraid that nothing can be found out for the time being. Yes, fortunately Mr. Ye is not seriously injured. A false alarm is a blessing in misfortune. Everyone was congratulating themselves that Mr. Ye was safe. Mr. Ye and his wife had no intention of staying here anymore. They ordered the guards at home to take Mr. Ye back, and the two of them also left. Mrs. Tao was about to speak but hesitated to mention the marriage between the two families, but swallowed it down under Mrs.'s gloomy expression and could not say a word. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 690. The guests left and returned to their seats. Tao walked into the inner courtyard and ordered with a cold face, "Where is Qingling now?" "Madam, the second lady is in her own room." "Tell her to roll over here." Chu Nanyi appeared on the corridor waving a fan, and said in a gentle and leisurely manner, "Madam, are you so angry because the plan failed?" Tao was startled and turned her head quickly. When she saw Chu Nanyi's face with a bit of a sneer, she said coldly, "What are you doing? Who told you to trespass into the Ruan family's backyard without permission? You are simply audacious." Chu Nanyi casually continued her words, "No matter how bold I am not as arrogant as Madame Ruan, who doesn't even take the imperial edict seriously. Madame Ruan feels that zipping Marquis' mansion has been too peaceful these years and wants to find something to do." Tao's face suddenly changed. "What do you mean?" "Her Majesty the Queen just issued an edict, ordering me and Qingling to run a women's thatched cottage together." Chu Nanyi leaned against the pillar and looked at her calmly. "Madame Ruan, do you know what this means?" Tao looked at him coldly. "It means that I have room to speak in front of His Majesty, and it means that I have the opportunity to meet Her Majesty the Queen and the Regent every day." Chu Nanyi smiled faintly. "I only need to tell His Majesty what happened today. If you are charged with the crime of contempt for the imperial edict, not to mention you, a lady in the inner house, even the entire zipping Marquis mansion can be razed to the ground in an instant. Madam, do you want to try it?" Tao's face suddenly changed. And Chu Nanyi added slowly, "Qingling is now the female doctor beside Her Majesty the Queen. She is Her Majesty's person regardless of her status. If others dare to harm her, or take advantage of her status as the legitimate mother to boss her around, it depends on whether Her Majesty will be unhappy about it. If Her Majesty is unhappy, I guess Qingling will not be the one who suffers. Madam, you can try it." Tao gritted her teeth. "Are you scaring me?" "Scare?" Chu Nanyi smiled lightly and shook her folding fan. "If you want to take it as a scare, it's fine. As for whether you believe it or not, that's your business. I've said all here, goodbye." After that, he turned around and left leisurely. Tao stared at his back coldly, gritting her teeth in hatred. Damn Chu Nanyi, damn Ruan Qingling. "Oh, by the way, there is one more thing." Chu Nanyi walked halfway and turned back, looking at Tao very politely. "Your young master Ruankong has not yet returned the 8,000 taels he borrowed from Huatong Ticket House. For Qingling's sake, I will waive the interest. I will send someone to collect the debt tonight. If your family still drags on, people from the Dali Temple will come to take Ruankong to questioning tomorrow. Madam, take care of yourself." After saying this, Chu Nanyi bowed slightly, as elegant as a gentleman walking out of an ancient painting, perfect and impeccable, and then turned around and left without looking back. Tao was stunned on the spot. What did he say? Huatong Ticket House? 8,000 taels of silver? How did he know that Kong borrowed 8,000 taels of silver from Huatong Ticket House? He also sent someone to collect the debt? Why did he send someone to collect the debt? A mere bastard of the Chu family, do you really think you are something? Tao clenched her hands, her heart was in a mess. She thought about the 2 betrothal gifts from the Ye family that were gone, and the Ye family's son was injured in the Ruan family. It was hard to say whether there would be any trouble in the marriage with Qingying, and all this was because of the damn Ruan Qingling. But she couldn't do anything now, and she was so angry that her heart ached.